विश्व शांति धारा। मनुष्य आज विनाश के कगार पर खड़ा है। पूरी दुनिया में अशांति फैली हुई है। ऐसे में विश्व शांति की आवश्यकता बहुत ज्यादा और तेज हो गई है। इस अशांत वातावरण में विश्व शांति कैसे और किस प्रकार हो सकती है, इस पर विचार विमर्श करने के लिए दुनिया भर के ज्ञानी, साधु संत, शास्त्रज्ञ और तत्ववेत्ता पुणे में एक साथ आए। अवसर था लोनी स्थित दुनिया के सबसे बड़े विश्व शांति गुंबद में आयोजित विज्ञान, धर्म और तत्व ज्ञान पर आधारित 8वीं वैश्विक संसद का। इस 3 दिवसीय समारोह में सहभागी ज्ञानी वक्ताओं ने विश्व शांति और मानव कल्याण के विषय पर अपने विचार प्रकट किए। आइए सुनते हैं उनमें से कुछ चुनिंदा विचार विश्व शांति दर्शन पर प्रसारित एक विशेष कार्यक्रम में, जिसका नाम है विश्व शांति धारा। विश्व शांति धारा में आप सबका स्वागत है। चेतनावस्था के विषय में अपने विचार प्रकट करते हुए विख्यात न्यूरोसर्जन डॉक्टर दीपक रानडे जी ने कहा कि बुद्धि दुनिया की ओर देखने का एक नजरिया है और हमें इसे वृद्धिंगत करना चाहिए।
Just a thought struck my mind that when we see any structure, it's not just about brick, mortar and cement and steel, but it's the noble intention, it's the sentiment that goes behind construction of any such monument. The intention of Professor Vishwanath to build this majestic, grandiose dome is absolutely spectacular, because in my engagements with him, it has always been that he has always been very keen to understand the purpose of life and to understand what ultimate reality is. I would like to inform all the audience present here that I am presently pursuing a PhD in trying to map which part of the brain is actually conscious using functional MRI, and we are using the most state-of-the-art equipment available to map this particular area, and I do hope that we would be making some path-breaking research in this domain. It is also my great privilege to be associated with scholars like Jayant Kandare, who is the director of a School of Consciousness Studies, of which I am also the faculty. And with the blessings of our patrons like Dr. Vijay Bhatkar and Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar and Dr. Vishwanath Karad, I do hope that we will be able to advance our understanding of consciousness to a certain extent, and that is the endeavor of this whole exercise. Coming to the topic of consciousness, I have studied allopathic medicine, and our understanding of neurology and the brain. The Western world has all along been working on the domain of what is called as a reductionist approach. We will always try to fragment, we will try to break things and see what is it made of. Now, unfortunately, when the philosophers like Descartes, he said that there is this mind-matter duality. The matter has been always a subject of study, and it has been studied very extensively. In fact, I was privileged to be visiting this Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, where the absolutely latest cutting-edge research in understanding matter is being undertaken. And it is an absolute wondrous kind of an achievement on mankind to have tried to figure out the Higgs boson and what exactly are the standard model of physics. And quantum physics is getting us to understand what matter is. But the tragedy is that this similar approach is going to be very ineffective when it comes to trying to understand what is mind. A reductionist approach is never going to help us understand what is the mind. And that is where the whole problem is arising. So the Western world, when it is trying to figure out what is consciousness, the reductionist approach that is adopted by the Western scientists is falling very flat, and we are not getting anywhere. We have consciousness currently the research that is going on in the domain of consciousness works in 2 arenas. One is the hard problem of consciousness, and one is the easy problem of consciousness. The easy problem of consciousness is what we are trying to work on by using the fMRI and trying to understand which part of the brain is responsible for us to be conscious. But for all the audience that is gathered over here, don't you think that even a single-celled bacteria, or for that matter, a mosquito, will also has that same consciousness, and perhaps the brain may not be the ultimate instrument of consciousness. Consciousness is something far more fundamental, and it is, as one of the greatest souls who walked this planet, Sant Jnaneshwar, he has gone on and said that the entire universe is a manifestation of the intelligent consciousness, which is something which I totally believe in. I had recently published an article in the Speaking Tree which spoke of consciousness does not reside in the brain. Consciousness is not in the brain. Consciousness is something that is universally present, and the brain is just an instrument or a device or the form. Like if we talk of consciousness as the formless, the form is just a device which will funnel the universal consciousness into a subset which it will use for its own existence. So consciousness is the primal factor, and I'm very, very convinced of it. The whole problem of studying consciousness arises, as we all might understand, is we are seeing the whole world with our eyes. We can see the whole manifest universe with our eyes. But can we see our own eye? We cannot see our own eyes. The instrument that we use to see the whole world cannot see itself. That is the precise problem of consciousness, that as being conscious, we are unable to understand our own self, because the cognizing entity is unable to cognize its own self. Coming to the Indian philosophical systems, which is what we are trying to deploy in our School of Consciousness Studies as we are taking it forward. The reductionist school of thought has been in our Indian philosophical system for a long time. We have what are called the 6 darshanas of the Indian philosophical system. One of them is the Sankhya Yoga, then the Yoga, then we have the Nyaya Yoga, then we have the Vaisheshika, then we have also the Mimamsa, and then the Vedanta. If you see the hierarchy of these 6 limbs of an Indian philosophical system, the Sankhya Yoga, this talks of the Purush and Prakriti. So the Nyaya talks of logic and reason. In fact, Vaisheshika talks of the 5 elements being the primordial elements which the universe is manifested of. But eventually when we come to Vedanta, it is only in the Vedanta that we have this understanding of consciousness from a holistic perspective. In fact, the prayer that we just said, the Purnamidam, Purnamida, Purnamadasya, that is one of the most exquisite prayers in the Upanishads, which talks of this is complete, that is complete. You remove the complete from the complete and still what remains is complete. Now, this holistic approach of understanding consciousness is what I believe, and I'm firmly convinced, will be India's contribution to understanding consciousness. And when it is the cherished dream of Dr. Vishwanath Karad, who is very, very of the firm belief that India will lead the way forward and become the guru of the world, as was dreamt by Swami Vivekananda. I am very, very convinced, because as of now, I'm working on the scientific part of consciousness also. I'm also working on the spiritual part of consciousness. It is indeed a privilege to be working with the MIT group of institutes in studying the domain of consciousness. And I do hope that we will be able to take one step further in understanding this very, very universal and a very, very omnipresent domain of consciousness in a greater detail. Thank you so much.